about the baby boy who's laid to earth to bring us joy. And I just want to sing this song to you. It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. With every breath I'm singing hallelujah.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
A couple came to Bethlehem, expecting child. They searched the inn to find a place, for you were coming soon. There was no room for them to stay, so in a manger filled with hay, God's only Son was born. Oh, hallelujah.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
The shepherds left their flocks by night to see the baby wrapped in light. A host of angels led them all to you. It was just as the angel said, you'd find him in a manger bed, Emmanuel, the Savior. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
A star shone bright up in the east. To Bethlehem the wise men three came many miles and journeyed long to you. And to the place at which you were, the frankincense and golden myrrh they gave to you and cried out, hallelujah.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Very nice Nancy, guys.
I pray on Christmas that the Lord will see me through. And I pray on Christmas He'll show me what to do. And I pray on Christmas He'll help me understand. And I pray on Christmas He'll take me by the hand. I pray on Christmas that the sick will soon be strong. And I pray on Christmas the Lord will hear my song. And I pray on Christmas that God will lead the way. And I pray on Christmas He'll get me through another day. And I pray on Christmas, I pray on Christmas, I pray on Christmas He'll get me through another day. I pray on Christmas that the problem's gonna be worked out. And I pray on Christmas God will show us what He loves about. And I pray on Christmas to do Your will each day. And I pray on Christmas that I'll be with You in heaven someday.
just for fun. And I bet you know it, so sing along.
Be it 70 degrees outside.
Maybe walking in a wanter. Yeah.
Great weather.
Well, good morning and welcome to First Christian Church. We're so glad you're here. We know that you could have been anywhere this morning, especially on this rainy morning, but we're so glad that you could join us today. So rise as you're able and join us in singing, Hark the Herald Angels Sing.
Joyful
glory reign, shining like the day. King of heaven, come. King of heaven, rise up. Who can stand against us? You are strong to save in your mighty name. King of heaven, come. You are strong to save in your mighty name. King of heaven, come.
Love incarnate, love divine. Stars and angels gave the sign. Bow to babe on bended knee. Savior of humanity. Unto us a child is born. He shall reign forevermore. Noel, Noel, come and see what God has done. Noel, Noel, the story of amazing love, the light of the world, given for us. Noel. Son of God and Son of Man, here before the world began, born to suffer, born to save, born to raise us from the grave. Christ the everlasting Lord, He shall reign forevermore. Noel, Noel, come and see what God has done. Noel, Noel, story of amazing love, the light of the world, given for us. Noel. Y'all know this song. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Keep singing loud now. Silent Lord of my life, I sing to shepherds quail with the cows on Christmas night. may be seated.
Good morning. So here we are again, and it's Sunday. And sometimes I feel like we come sliding into Sunday and we're so empty. And I'm empty, but I'm so grateful to be here today to fuel back up, to get us into that place that we need to be with this week that's getting ready to happen and the birthday that we will celebrate at the end of this week. So I do have just an announcement to make about church services on Friday. You can continue to be fueled up. 6:30 and 11 o'clock Friday night. And then on next Sunday, we will have one service at 10 a.m. in the sanctuary. So please do join us for those services and just round out the rest of this glorious week. Will you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, hope and peace and joy have come this Advent season. And today, as we celebrate love coming here to earth, we celebrate that love incarnate and the love divine. In you, we are complete, strong, fulfilled. What you offer us is unconditional, unmerited, and unearned. Let us accept that gift freely and in turn share it within our families, our neighborhoods, and our broader community. When others see us, let them see you through our words, our actions, and deeds. Give us enough strength for today. Remind us that as your hands and feet, there are many steps left to take, burdens to ease, and brothers and sisters to lift up and stand in solidarity with. Let the Spirit move us. Let your Son's teachings guide us, and your love sustain us as we do this work together as one, saying the prayer Jesus gave us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. This is the time in our service where we get to truly come together. We can offer so much of what has been blessed in our lives. You can leave some of that in an offering basket. They're on your tables and they're by the doors. If you have a particular burden that's weighing heavily on you or something that you just want to be able to lay down at the cross, there's paper on your tables and pencils, and you can write that down and affix it to the cross. And then finally, we get to come together for communion. And this table is for everyone, not just a member of First Christian Church or for a follower of Christ. It's truly Jesus' table for all. And with that, I invite Nancy to do the words of institution.
Good morning. On this Sunday of love, we come to celebrate the ultimate love that was shown to us all when God gave his Son for our sins. And so it's very fitting that we should come to this table today in full recognition of the grace he extended to us. On that night long ago, when Jesus met with his disciples in the upper room, he took the bread and he broke it and he blessed it. And he said, "This is my body, broken for you. Whenever you take of this bread, do it in remembrance of me." And in like manner, he took the cup and he blessed it. And he said, "This is the blood of the new covenant. Whenever you drink this, do it in remembrance of me." The gifts of God for the people of God.
Good morning. Great to see you all this morning. I don't typically do this, but there's something that has taken place recently that is a big, big deal. Coach, would you come up here for a second, please? I was informed just a few minutes ago that this special man in my life and in so many lives, particularly for decades, the love that you've poured into so many people. I remember I'd been here less than a year, and Coach was walking by me and looked me right in the eyes and said, "I love you." And there are a lot of men who won't look at another man in the eyes and say that. And it's your love that makes you so special, beyond any award you could ever receive. That being the case, he received an extraordinary award recently. He's in the Hall of Fame for a number of reasons, for his coaching ability, but also on a whole new level as an athletic director. 4,000 names were submitted, were nominated, and only 4 were selected. And Coach was one of them. Congratulations.
I love you, Tom.
We are so privileged to be a part of this community of faith. If you've been a long-time member, if you happen to be here for the first time, this is an extraordinary, extraordinary community of faith. I would ask you if you're ready for Christmas. It's coming, isn't it? It's just a few days away, and I have been sharing for the past few weeks that this is an Advent season that I didn't want to get past me, as it has in years prior to this year, despite my best efforts, beginning right after Thanksgiving, with the intentionality of drawing closer to God through this story that is some 2,000 years old now. My journey of faith has been perceived as just that, my journey of faith. And that journey metaphor is one that is very scripturally based. We understand that Abraham, as a person of faith, left that which was familiar to him, was called to enter into circumstances and enter into a journey that would forever change his life. And while Abraham was far from perfect, we get to see his story. And our story and our journey, I'm beginning to see, are one and the same. This past week, story has been on my mind strongly. The notion of story has been on my mind. And if I were to ask you, what is the story of Christmas all about? During this Advent season, we have been preparing, we've been watching, we've been making room in our hearts, our minds, our spirits to encounter God anew. Encounter God in a way that perhaps we haven't encountered God before, so that it will contribute to our understanding of the story of Christmas, which will forever alter our personal stories. If someone were to ask you, what is the story of Christmas all about? What would you say? Trust, love, obedience. We are fortunate that we have in the Synoptic Gospels are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John is a little bit different and is considered to have been written decades after Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Particularly Matthew and Luke, though, we have different stories. There are some historians that look at the events around Jesus' birth, and they will consult historians that were contemporaneous with the events that actually took place a little more than 2,000 years ago. And some people consider whether or not these stories are true in terms of whether or not they are historical facts. Was there really a census taken at a particular time? Would Joseph had to have gone back to his hometown? Is that fitting with what would have been a part of the Roman dominance and occupation of the people in Palestine, of which Jesus and his family would have been a part? Is that a historical fact? And if it's not a historical fact, does it make it any less true? Is Luke's story, even if it's not a historical fact, is it true? There are some people who decide if something's true based on whether or not it is a fact. But I believe stories can be profoundly true, even if they're not a literal historical fact. There was a story that woke me up this morning by Harry Van Dyke. The story of the other wise man. Have any of you ever heard of that story? It was written 125 years ago. It's a small little book. And this story, as I say, it woke me up at about 4:15 this morning. It really did. I'd forgotten about this story, the story that I encountered for the first time last year. And it struck me, I looked at the introduction, and the writer says this: what does life mean? What does life mean? If the meaning could be put into a sentence, there would be no need of telling the story, he said. I've been thinking about the people who have impacted my story. Do you ever think about that? About the people who have impacted your story along the way? Those people who are most significant, or an event and the players involved impact our story, and that person and that event can change the trajectory of our lives. We can no longer go in the same direction that we were once traveling in. I was thinking about the circumstances surrounding Jesus' birth and the people that were a part of that story. Let's listen to the words of Mary as recorded in the Gospel according to St. Luke. And we're picking up in this passage, chapter 1, verse 46. We're picking up after her visit with Elizabeth. And we know that Elizabeth is the mother of John the Baptist. John's father was Zechariah. For the past few weeks, I've reminded everyone of the shepherds. The people whose lives were a part of Jesus' story. And the ways in which Jesus was a part of their story. In this particular passage, Mary has already had a divine revelation. She's been visited by an angel who tells her of the events that are getting ready to unfold. And then she visits Elizabeth, who also has something of a theophany, an encounter with God, something that is revealed through an encounter with God or through one of God's messengers. And this is Mary's response upon visiting with Elizabeth. And Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord." What a statement. My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. His mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. He He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promise he made to our ancestors, to Abraham, and to his descendants forever. And Mary remained with her about 3 months and then returned to her home. Mary's story, a story that many of us have a perception of and that people throughout history have had different interpretations of. And our stories and the ways in which our lives have been impacted shape the way that we read Mary's story. We know that in other traditions, people pray directly to Mary as the Mother of God. There are some people who insist that if we don't believe in the Virgin Mary and divine conception, that we're not actually Christians. I've known people who thought that if they didn't believe that particular matter, that they couldn't be appropriately considered Christians. And so, because they were wrestling with how that could be possible, they wondered if they weren't, in fact, Christians. It's a part of their story and something that informed it, and a person who played a role in someone's story for one to have somewhat of a crisis of faith about how they interpret the story of Mary. So again, I would ask you, what is the story of Christmas, and how has that story affected your life in particular? Have you ever thought about how that story has affected your life in particular? The story of Christmas, that Jesus is the one who is God's Son. It is God in human form, Emmanuel, God with us. God entering into human history, into the human predicament, into the human situation, with all of the darkness, with all of the tragedy, with all of the violence. God entered into that situation. God who is transcendent, God who is holy, God who is holy, the holy other, that's what it means. That which is wholly other, the transcendent one, the one who transcends all of that, the one who transcends greed, the one who transcends violence, the one who transcends envy, the one who transcends sin, enters into human history. That's hard for us to get our minds around, isn't it? The eternal one takes on human form, bodily form. It doesn't fit our categories, does it? How would we tell the story of Christmas? We could point people to Luke, we could point people to Matthew, we could point people to John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning, and the Word became flesh. The light entered into the darkness, and the darkness will never overcome it. That's John's story. Matthew's story, we would point to Matthew, where there is a little more emphasis on Joseph, because he was the one who was a descendant of David, who would fulfill the prophecy of the lineage through whom the Messiah was to come. The emphasis in Luke is on Mary primarily. In Luke, we have the shepherds who were considered the peasants of that context. They wouldn't have been highly educated. They might have been illiterate. In all likelihood, they wouldn't have been able to read. And yet divine revelation came to them in the form of an angel. And yet, with Matthew, we have the learned ones, the ones who understood esoteric type literature, the ones who studied the stars and had received over the years, decades, centuries, wisdom. And they were using everything within their mental faculties to perceive where this Christ child would be born. All of these are part of that story, and it rounds out the story, doesn't it? God comes to us in many different ways. Above all, as is fitting on this fourth Sunday in Advent, we know that Christmas, the story of Christmas, really is the story of love. My journey and my story since having that initial encounter has been trying to figure out how to communicate just that. And like Harry Van Dyke says, what is the meaning of life? If we could tell someone in a sentence, then we wouldn't have to tell the story. How do we say even what love is? You all have heard me say more times than you can count, God is love. Those who do not know love do not know God, for God is love, we read in 1 John. What does that mean? What is the meaning of love? If we could tell it in a sentence, we wouldn't have to tell the story, would we? I have tried in all kinds of ways, you know I have, to try to describe love, to give descriptions, relative definitions. One of my favorite is an unconditional commitment to the good of the other. That's what love is. It's an unconditional commitment to the good of the other. It's disinterested in the sense that it doesn't take account of how it will affect me. Love is other-oriented. You recall these concepts now that we used to use all the time. Open to self-sacrifice insofar as sacrifice is constructive. I believe it is worthwhile actually to commit those concepts to memory, and I can assure you I actually employ them on a somewhat regular basis. Is this action, is this direction, is it an unconditional commitment to the good of the other? Because self-interest can be elusive and sneaky, can it? Am I open to self-sacrifice? And am I open to self-sacrifice insofar as it is constructive? For those of you who have not read the story of the other wise man, I'm not going to give it away because I want you to read it if you get a chance. You can borrow my copy. This is one of the few books I've not written all in. Some of you have borrowed some of my books. You know I write all in them in margins and underline and that kind of thing. But Van Dyke said this story came to him. The idea came to him, but after the idea, like any idea, it took a great deal of time and research before he could work it out. And he says, any story that we love, it deserves being worked out until we're able to tell the truth of that story. But the story is about this fourth wise man that is not listed in the Gospels, and it's a brilliant, brilliant story. This wise man wanted to catch up with the other three wise men, and he sold everything that he had, and he bought 3 valuable jewels. And he was going to present these jewels to the Christ child. But he had to meet up with them in 15 days. And if he was to keep a pace that would be a grueling pace of this 150, whatever metric that was. It wasn't miles, but it was 150 of some distance. That meant for 10 days he would have to cover the ground of 15 of those. And he found himself delayed once by a person who was ailing in health. And for his continued health, he had to give up one of his jewels. And then the next time he stops, he has arrived in Bethlehem, but he's too late. Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus have gone, and so have the other wise men. But while he's there, Herod's soldiers arrive. We know in the Gospel of Matthew that Herod told the wise men to come back and tell him where he was so that he too could pay him homage. That's one of those words. Is that how you say that? Homage? Homage. That's the deep south coming out of me. Don't, won't, homage. Pay him homage. Did I sound more learned now? But he arrives a little bit too late, and those soldiers have shown up. And Herod wanted any child 2 years or younger. And there's a mother of a small child that he had heard, and he's actually having a conversation with her. She's singing to this child. And the soldiers arrive. You can hear the chaos, and you can hear the panic, and you can hear the terror. And the people in the village are shouting, "The soldiers are coming, the soldiers are coming." And the protagonist, this fourth wise man, he enters and stands in the doorway when a soldier arrives. And the soldier goes to push him out of the way. But he stands there firmly. And he said, "There are no others here." And he pulls out a jewel. And the captain of the soldiers turns and says to the others, essentially, "This house is clear. There are no others here." People asked Van Dyke later why he had the fourth wise man lie in this story. It was somewhat controversial that he lied. But it seems to me this was a powerful story of love. This man had sold everything he owned. He had 3 jewels. He's now used his second one to protect this child, but in order to do it, he had to lie. Now we know from the beginning that this is a person of high virtue. He has considered what the summum bonum of life is. What is the highest good? What is the highest aim? And philosophers throughout history, some have said that truth is the highest aim. Some have said that faith is the highest aim. Van Dyke says, "I didn't have him lie. This story came to me. This is his story." It struck me recently, someone who shaped my story before I was even aware of it. I've told you all on several occasions what a rascal I was. And I was. I still am, but God's working on me. I was in high school and was in my senior year. And the summer before, we'd gone out to a river that's not nearly as pretty as the Pamlico. But it was a place where teenagers could go and be rascals, for those of us who are rascal teenagers. And there was a little bit of beer and stuff like that. This is the PG-13 version. I hope that doesn't offend anybody. And the police showed up. There were about 100 of us. Some people swam across the river. I decided not to. I thought I'd slipped into safety with the group that had already been breathalyzed. But one of them said, "I didn't see you. Come over here." So I was put in the back of the police car, and me along, about 60 of us showed up at the police department. Part of it I thought was exciting and fun until I realized, boy, I might not be able to play my senior year of athletics. What's worse, what if I get kicked out of school? Because my mother had sacrificed a great deal on a single income to send me to this school, hoping that my trajectory would be different than what it had been. Because I went to the headmaster and told him what had happened, he appreciated that I'd been forthcoming and that I'd come and told him what I had done. And so I didn't get kicked out of the school, and he'd already declared that. And he said, "By the way, why did you come and tell me?" And I said, "Well, you know our local newspaper, anytime someone's been arrested, it's going to show up in the newspaper, and I knew you were going to see it anyway, so I came and confessed it." It wasn't as noble as he had first thought. I was ready to get this over with. A couple of months later, I had not learned my lesson. And there were several of us that had gone up on this mountaintop where you could see all over the small town that I grew up in, but it was a beautiful view. There were several of us, and this time it didn't involve the police. There was a dorm student, and when we went to drop him off, evidently it became evident that he had been drinking, and whether I had or not, and I'll leave that up to your imagination to decide whether I had or not, I would have been guilty by association because he had been out in the same vehicle that I was in. So this was prior to cell phones. This was 1991. They started calling my house, my mother's house, and I didn't return the call. And we had been alerted that they were going to call us so that we would go back to the school, at which time we would have all been in trouble. So that gave me time to devise a story in which a couple of the guys had gone on up to that mountain, but I had been dropped off at a friend's house that I had grown up with. She was like a sister to me, Jill, and her parents were like parents to me, David and Cheryl. And so I said, I had been dropped off at Jill's house. This is a day later. So they couldn't call me back and breathalyze me. And I called and I asked Cheryl if she would cover the story for me, that that's where I had been. And she said she would. A couple of days later, she told me, in my lifetime, and some of you may not believe this, but I believe it, on any conscious level that she's aware of, but she said it this way: I have never told a lie. I hope you understand the position you put me in. I lied for you. What does love require? She probably had no more valuable jewel in her jewelry case than her word and her truth. If she had denied it, that I had been there, I don't know that I would literally be standing in front of you right now. Literally. Some people say, let him get what he deserves. Is that the truth? Or is an act of mercy something that can alter the course of our lives? That was a seed that was planted on the inside of me. I've never thanked her for that. I'm going to look into these cameras right now and say thank you for that kind of sacrificial love. That's a part of my story. And because of that sacrificial love, I better understand the story of Christmas. Profound sacrifice so that others will know what love means. What is your story? Who has sacrificed for you? Who would you be willing to sacrifice for so they would know the meaning of Christmas, the meaning of God's sacrificial love? My prayer is that more and more, my story has less and less to do with me, and more to do with Jesus. It's his story that changes all of our stories. Amen. I invite you to stand as you're able. Sometimes our stories and our role therein, we look back, and I'm ashamed of the role I played in hers. But I thank God for the role she played in mine. How can we commit to being the kind of people that when they look back at their story, they're so glad we were a part of it because it drew them closer to the story of Jesus? Let us make that our prayer as we sing our song of commitment.
Shepherds kept their watching, silent flocks by night. Behold, the out the heavens, the shone a holy light. And I say, go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Shepherds feared and trembled when low above the earth rang out the angel chorus that held our Savior's birth. Down in a lonely manger, a humble Christ was born, and God sent us salvation on that blessed Christmas morn. Say, go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. A lonely seeker, I saw both night and day. I asked the Lord to help me, and he showed me the way. He made me a watchman upon a city wall, and if I am a Christian, I am the beast of all. And I say, tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. And I say, go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born.
We're going to go old school real quick, lock the doors. Nobody can leave until they've contributed. I hope that's not a bad joke. In all seriousness, can we see those pictures of Some people have been devastated. One of the ways we can share the meaning of Christmas with light shining in the darkness, and the darkness never ever overcoming the light. We have an opportunity. I'm going to place this basket here. No one is under obligation. If you have a sense, if you're being prompted, you can write it in the form of a check to Week of Compassion. One of the beautiful things about being a part of a denomination is that they can do the legwork and the research and make sure that the resources get to exactly where they need to be. If some of you would like to contribute to that, again, no obligation, but if it's something you feel led to do, you can place a check or some loose change, whatever you would like, and we'll make sure that it gets to the people who need it during this time of year. And now may the love of God, the love that entered into human history 2,000 years ago, the love that is so apparent in this room, the love that drew us here this morning, the love that is our very breath, the love that is our inspiration, the love from which we will never, ever be separated, the love that is the meaning of Christmas. May that love guard and sustain our hearts this day and forevermore. Amen.
I said, go.